This video is brought to you by Midway USA. Support the channel by choosing Midway for your shooting and outdoor supplies.
Woo boy! All right, so we're talking about how to use iron sights in a CQB setting here.
And if there's something I'm going to listen to you tell me about when it comes to CQB stuff, close range shooting, it's going to be the iron sight shooting.
And so why are we talking
Iron
about
sight lord?
Why are we talking about iron sights in a CQB setting? Because why not? A lot of these things in the world exist with iron sights only.
I will say, in the last 2 years, I have seen a plethora of videos of rifles that look very similar to that being employed in very tight confined spaces.
Yeah, and so this is one thing that I remember in the past. You've seen me actually compete with an AK103 in a 3-gun setting, which people all thought I was insane.
You were insane.
I mean, I won top in that class, but it was a small match.
Yes.
Because nobody else was competing with iron sight AKs. But that said, there are actual ways of running iron sight rifles, and today we'll talk about the AK system. We'll talk about the AR system with carry handles. One of my favorites, the H&K systems, which you just shoot it as it was designed. And then Josh, you were talking about something that was similar to this, not on the same note, but a dead optic.
Yeah, well, some of what you were talking to me about in terms of the technique that you use to get your hits with these systems with irons at speed up close reminds me very much of like a base concept, which we'll get into.
Yeah, so I think let's start with the H&K, because the H&K almost has built-in CQB iron sights. Specifically the H&K for the rifle series, right? Your submachine guns only have either have castle nuts on top, or it's only apertures. As far as the H&K rifle sights, setting number 1 is typically a wide V-notch, which means you then float the entire giant globe onto the V-notch on the back, and you just put the entire circle on the target, front and rear reference point.
Where is your focus?
Target?
Yeah, target focus, right?
Yeah. So at this point, like this turns into the peripheral. As long as I'm aligning the giant globe on the V sight on the back, it intuitively puts the sight onto the target. Back into there. All right, so obviously,
I was sort of like picking up the speed because I was sort of feeling what the recoil impulse is like on it. And I'm going, okay. And then, yeah, you can definitely shoot that fast because I'm just staring at the target.
Yeah, so, you cleared everything out for the rifle. So, the H&K system, the sights are built in with almost like a CQB setting on the number 1. Same thing applies to the G3s. Now, what is trickier to some people comes down to, honestly, the AK. Because a lot of people, they don't think of the AK with a sighting system to run CQB. And quite frankly, it was not designed for one. They have the P setting, which is the battle setting. But that just basically gives you a 300 meter zero for 7.62s. It gives you a 300 meter zero as you reference out. If you take the AK and you're slowly using the sights as issued to align the front into the notch, it's gonna take forever. Now, if you drop the AK to the 1 setting, you'll have these 2 nubs which actually hold the rear sight in place, and you reference the entire globe in the front, kind of like the H&K. If you do that, it works almost like the H&K sights.
So you're using the, point it toward the camera a bit here, but you're using where the rear sight retaining, like basically where the retention is for the 2 posts from the rear sight, and you're using that as basically like giant pistol sights on the back.
Yes, so that this nub, when you put it on the 100 meter setting, these two nubs turn into your rear sight. Well,
why does the 100-meter setting matter?
Because it lowers your rear sight enough to clear the rear nubs.
Got it, okay. So you're basically, by putting it on 100 meters, you're able to then perceive those rear nubs and use them as rear pistol sights,
Correct,
basically. Yeah.
correct. But you're not really looking at the front post per se. You're floating this giant U on top of the rear.
Show them. Point it right at them. Show them what you're doing.
This U right here is floated right on top of this nub. And by doing that, you have a very coarse front and rear sight system, almost like night sights. And by doing that,
oh, kind of like the XS system sights from back in like
yes,
2005.
The idea is you having a very coarse system for closer range, to where you don't have to finally find your aperture in the front sight post.
Okay, that makes sense. So you're basically just floating that big front sight hood on the top of that rear post. Okay.
Ready? Here, I want you to try it.
Okay, so take the
front sight U, float it between the two little notches where it retains the rear sight action.
That's actually super fast.
I know.
That's so much easier than trying to shoot through the irons.
But that is not what the Soviet army prescribed. Or I guess this is a 103, so the Russian army did not prescribe this technique.
Interesting. I need to adjust, I think, a little bit where I'm holding on the target for that at this distance, because this is 25, so it's not like we're in the room.
And at that, you're just entirely ignoring the front sight post.
Yeah, I was just using like a giant. Yep. Effectively, I was imagining in my brain this is just like a big ball sitting there.
Exactly. It's almost like using shotgun sights.
Ah, okay.
So on that note, if you're fortunate enough to have an M16A2 sight, I mean, it's kind of like a built-in short-range system, right? With M16A2 sights, you could either shoot it as is.
So you're shooting right through the peep there?
Yeah, because you've got a wide aperture for the 0-2 for 0 to 200 meters. If you're using M16A...
You're shooting both eyes, sorry, not to interrupt you, you're shooting both eyes open yes. Just right through the rear peep.
Yes, and what you're really looking for, like the rear sight, yes, but also you're using the carry handle as almost like a runway.
Okay.
To look down. Here, you try it.
All right, so
do it on slow fire first to get a hold of it.
All right, so yeah, I can go easily, like the peep is big enough, I can easily go both eyes open. I'm just staring at the target and just shoot. Basically, honestly, I'm not really even paying attention to the front sight at all. I'm just sort of like looking through this hole and making sure the target's there.
You're bracketing the target with the front sight protectors instead of using the front sight post.
Yeah, it's basically I'm just there and I'm going like, yeah, it's just there. It's just sort of there. So what's the other way that you've done this?
The other way, if you've got A1 sights or the C7, the old school C7 sights, which are the two position peeps, you could put the front sight on top of the rear sight and aim at a lower position at a 6 o'clock battle hold. So it would look kind of like.
Okay, so you're, in this instance, if you face the camera really quick, you're basically, I'm gonna come around, take a step to your left. Okay, so basically what you're doing is you're looking over the top of this and basically aligning it with right at the top of where the gas block stops and where the post actually starts to open.
Correct.
And you're just sitting it there.
I'm just sitting it on top and then using that entire front sight post, and I'm bracketing the belly of this target now.
Okay, so you're having to aim low to
Yep, aim at the belly.
Okay, so it's definitely there.
That was a hit. That was a hit. It just glanced off.
Okay, so I still need to go even lower.
Yep.
Yeah, so on a C-zone plate there, I'm like aiming underneath him.
Yeah.
I think if you didn't, for me, just doing this really quickly, I like the larger aperture and just staring through it.
I mean, another check for the M16A2,
well,
huh?
But if I didn't have that, and I had just this like little peep that you have open now, I mean, that's all still very shootable.
It's still usable. Now, some guys, what they did, they would flip the rear sight onto kind of like a half position, and they would try to use the top of the runway
Interesting.
as a reference to the top of the bunny rabbit ears.
Yeah.
And bracket it with the rear nubs and the top nubs over there.
So, all right, that gets us then into this conversation, which is shooting not an iron-sighted rifle. In fact, there aren't even iron sights on this rifle. But what I'm going to show really quick, because people will definitely not believe me. But Henry, would you please confirm
Sure.
that there's no, the dot is
Yep,
not on?
The dot is off.
Okay, so for the audience, like, we'll get you right behind there. No dot, dot is off. Okay, and now you saw it, and I'm not turning it on.
Yeah, don't touch it.
No touchy. So what I've noticed is, listen, with the EOTechs, I love EOTechs, they're great sights.
Battery life.
I have run them out of battery at the most inopportune times, like at matches or after I haven't shot for a while. I'll come out and it will work when it's in my safe.
Yeah.
But then when I get outside with it and it's cold and I'm away from fresh batteries, it's like,
Yeah. Oh no, you shall suffer.
But so what I've noticed is, what you were doing on those systems is you're basically staring at your target.
Yep.
And you're just using like something in the system to give you a, yes, I'm pointed where I sort of need to be pointed, but you're really just staring at the target and using your index. Like using what you know, like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be on this. You can do the exact same thing with the actual optic. So I can look right through the optic and I know that if I have a good cheek weld and head position, the dot's usually in the very middle of the optic. If I go to the 25,
I mean, remember, Josh is shooting with no dot. I mean, it's not perfect.
so basically, like, again, just without a dot at all, I'm able to at least, like, kind of get hits here to some degree. A little high on that one. To some degree. Ooh, on the microphone.
It's all good.
For Boatin. I'm able to get hits to some degree shooting with, literally just with nothing. And I'm just aiming down the gun. And I'm going, yeah, well, like, this is where it's like, this is where it's supposed to hit.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is with rifles, it's a little bit more, I'd say, like, trickier, especially when you're looking at iron sight rifles, because it's just not what people are used to nowadays anymore. This is like a very 80s, 90s shooting technique that had been perfected in the late Cold War era. I don't know where I learned the AK stuff from, or I'm just not telling you because I learned it from an illicit source. But when it comes to it, like, this is why, go ahead.
I'm just, I want to put one on paper a little fast here.
Okay. It started drifting up, it looked like.
Yeah, well, maybe that's part of the perception that makes it, maybe just as a straight takeaway. It's not like I practice doing this a whole lot. But
You're also at a disadvantage because you have one aiming point.
Well, what's interesting about it is, I think it goes to show how, when
superior iron sights are, because we don't need batteries to run.
I think it goes to show that when I'm shooting regular, how much I'm using the dot to help correct in long recoil strings or in actual strings of fire, and to help really make sure I'm returning the gun to the right point. Because obviously, like, yeah, like, I'm shooting mostly A's and C's, but it's not all like dead center where it would be if I had the dot on and I was able to track it, right?
Yeah, but what it comes down to, a lot of times, you know, you look at something like this, and nowadays this type of knowledge is really not passed along.
Definitely not the iron sight stuff.
Even the H&K, like, first thing people do, they weld a top rail on and put whatever optic they want on it.
Yes.
The H&K system has some of the best iron sights you could find.
Henry, is that an HK?
This is not an HK. This is formerly an HK. I do have HK93s. Thank you, Josh, for pointing it out. I get it.
How does it feel to be poor?
Again, I will bring the HKs out later. It's like the girlfriend that, you know, like, oh yeah, my girlfriend exists and she lives in a different city, right? But back to that, the HK sight system, this is not an HK, this is a C93, has that wide V where you could float the globe right on top of, and that's actually a very effective CQB sighting system. But that's not to say that your standard, most common sighting systems for iron sights on the AK and the AR15 are useless in CQB operations. In fact, there is a whole generation of Delta operators that it would tell you that these iron sights are quite usable in CQB operations.
Yeah, I mean, there's an entire piece of this whole thing, which is like, as the target gets, we're doing this at 25, this paper here is at 10. As things get implicitly closer, the level of, let's call it the level of accuracy that you require, that's the wrong word because people misperceive
No, the effectiveness, the effective hits on target.
Well, yeah, I guess where I'm going with this is, as things get closer, the margin of error increases dramatically, right? So if you're able to do these at 25 using the sights, you can afford to be even looser and be doing a lot of, I wouldn't call it purely index-based shooting, but you could probably get away with not having any sights at all, just knowing like, oh, I just need to sort of hold here and this is just where I need to be, and be able to get shots on target. I mean, that's kind of, not exactly, because I'm still looking through a box, but it's kind of what we're doing with this. And again, what this tells me is that my index, however I was holding this and setting up, my index is in that spot with the big cluster up top, right?
Yeah.
So I need to work on that a little bit to help bring that down.
I mean, but if that's something maybe you would train for if you run into frequent battery drainage, or you could work on better battery logistics. But, so as a, let me take my ear pro off so I'm not yelling at the audience anymore. So as a shooter of 2024, someone who is not stuck in the era of let's pray to the rains in Africa, how do you feel like, this was kind of like your first time running iron sights up close, right?
Yeah.
Well,
like
in this way, in this
like
sense.
I've messed around with shooting irons up close a few times in a few courses when I was first learning how to shoot.
Yeah.
But I haven't done it in the last, I don't know, 5 years. It is semi-intuitive. It really comes down to, again, it's basic fundamental stuff where it's like, my job is to stare at the spot on the target I want the round to go, and I have to just be able to sort of put the sights in a position where they give me the indication that what I'm doing is correct, but I'm not really using them.
Yeah. It's like using shotgun sights, but knowing the reference point for the front and the back for a shotgun sight.
Hey, are you guys enjoying hanging out on range with us? Well, maybe you'd like to join the Patreon and hop into the private Discord. We'll see you guys there. Now let's get back to it.
Because it's not made for that. You're just adapting the system in order to use up close.
The other thing I would say that is effective about using this, just as I'm doing it loosely here and thinking, is if I'm aggressing or I'm in a area where I'm trying to shoot close targets, whether it's a match or somewhere else.
Or moving targets.
Yes, exactly. Any type of like where I need vision.
Yeah.
When I get all the way behind the gun and I'm like looking through the rear sight, that to me sucks.
Yeah.
I'm covering huge portions of my target. If I can drop down and then look over the top of the sights, it presents to me, at least, I would imagine, and again, because I'm just doing it here like really for the first time, it presents to me like way more vision of what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, it's honestly, these are techniques that guys spent up until late Cold War perfecting. And then as soon as optics came about, it's almost like a forgotten knowledge.
Yeah. So interesting. It's good stuff. I appreciate you sharing it.
Yeah, man.
Cool.
So guys out there, obviously the takeaway is Josh's red dots and optics suck, and these will run forever. And if you have any FUD comments, you know, I am your guy.
Put these on.
Oh.
Put these on. Are they on?
They're on, but I have no eyes. Josh can shoot with a dead red dot.
I turned it on.
Oh God! All right. See you guys on the range.
716 is 096, 4 Vic, 8 packs, Redcon 1, green to green. How copy, over?
096, this is 716, roger, over. 16, 091, 1 pack, green, green, over. This is 716, roger, over.
16, 2, 1 Victor, 2 packs, Redcon 1, over.